Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself and Mike. And today, more news coming out around Scamacca and the potential exit that he will be facing at West Ham this summer. And the latest club that is being linked is AS Roma from the Italian league. Obviously, since Tammy Abraham picked up that really bad ACL injury right at the end of the season, they were linked straight away with Scamacca, and he was already linked back with a move to the Italian league. So it kind of made sense that this would be, put on the pedestal really early on in the transfer window. So the source came directly from Fabrizio, as many of you probably are aware on Twitter, basically saying that Roma are going to be in London later this week to kind of advance in negotiations with West Ham for Scamacca. They want him on loan originally as a replacement for Abraham after his injury. So first question is, Mike, why would we let him go on loan and not a permanent deal?
So I think that, there can be multiple reasons for this. One could be as simple as he's not enjoying his time in England, is homesick and wants to get home. That could be just simply one reason for it. Another one could be the fact that we feel that maybe he needs a season playing more football and going back home, giving the confidence, playing full, constantly when maybe Antonio might be kept and so on, and Danny Ings may be above him. I doubt that last bit. But, he may be a little bit down the pecking order, so we're thinking maybe get in some cash for that, and then maybe, and so on. But in all honesty, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, the deal. It just defies a bit of logic, unless the player is so unhappy and he doesn't want to be at a club. But even still, then going for a loan deal, unless it's a loan with an obligation, and that loan deal plus the obligation is then going to recoup the entirety of what we paid for him, maybe probably a little bit extra on top, and also covering his wages. Unless that happens, it ultimately is a bit pointless. And again, it's really bad financial operations from the club to do that.
I think there's a couple of angles you can look at it from. You can look at it from Scamacca's angle. Maybe he wants to move away from maybe playing under David Moyes in that system, because it's been reported that he's not really suited that way. And obviously the comments that Antonio made, or it could be that, Moyes himself just does not want Scamacca as his striker, and, loaning him out when Moyes has one more season effectively left on his contract at West Ham could actually be the best option, because he'd then play some football in the Italian league and he would come back and he would still be our striker, potentially for a new manager to come in. So it's also being reported now today that Moyes kind of wants to look towards moving Cornet potentially as a striker to kind of play back up to Antonio. There were heavy links that Antonio is going to be moving away, but it looks like he might be staying another season. So then you've got Danny Ings as well, and then also Scamacca. So that's effectively 4 strikers that we've got lined up, and then potentially anyone else that comes in. So I think that Scamacca isn't in Moyes' plans, and I think Scamacca knows that. And if an opportunity came up to go to Roma on loan or permanently, I think he would take it. But from a kind of financial point of view and the club's point of view, would you rather just sell the player if he's not in the manager's plans, regardless of whether Moyes has one season left or not? Because that's not really planning for a future when you're kind of basically saying, oh, we can go for a year, but we might change managers in a year so he can stick around for them.
I don't think we're selling him if at a minimum we're getting back what we paid for him. And that's it. Like, as simple as that. I would not be selling him any other reason. I would be just saying, personally, I would be like, I know you're not going anywhere. You've got a 5-year contract, 4.5, 4-year contract, whatever it is. And a loan deal doesn't suit us unless they are paying your entire wage the entire period. They're given a sizable loan fee. And again, we are guaranteed to get money at the end of it, because they're going to pay for you to then move permanently. And again, we're going to be making money. So unless, as I say, essentially, a loan deal is only acceptable if it turns into a future deal, but only, again, if everything financially is recouped. So we're not paying any wages. Everything has been paid for in terms of what we paid for him. Otherwise, no. Why? He's one of the, as of last season or the season before, was one of the top young strikers in Europe, and everyone was clambering from me. You know, at PSG, and we rejected PSG. It hasn't really gone to plan this year, but again, there's been multiple things of that. Trying to learn, you know, settle in a new country, trying to learn and play in a system that isn't one that he's been played in and utilised in that often. You know, there's been other rumours about what's been going on a training pitch with certain players and making things uncomfortable and difficult when they didn't need to be. And, you know, the injuries as well. So when you look at it all like that, he's actually scored important goals and stuff. He's actually been fairly important for us this year, especially in the Conference League during
So do you think that he can be a success if he does stay next season under David Moyes and under the style of play that we adapt? Do you think he can still play in that system?
We've even talked about it. The fact that we're looking at Harvey Barnes, something that we've said that constantly Scamacca needs and something that helps him flourish is having players running in on diagonals, looking to come into those channels so he can play the ball. Harvey Barnes is always going to look to go in behind. Then you got Bowen looking to do the same. All of a sudden, he hasn't got people that are just playing, you know, in that kind of a lateral space or trying to play in the space that he wants to. He wants to drop. So he hasn't got to worry about players dropping into those little pockets. And he can be used to drop in. And then, you know, if we do go for another defensive midfielder and potentially Souček, you could argue, well, we can play 2 DMs and then you pretty much can play a 4 up top with Scamacca and Paqueta playing deep and pulling strings in a kind of the 8 and 10-ish kind of roles. And then you've got Bowen and Barnes running into the channels, you know, and then pushing through in that position, which obviously is something that Scamacca thrives on because it's players in and around him. So in actual fact, next year could be better for him because if we get someone like Harvey Barnes and if we maybe go for ultra defensive in a midfield sense and having 2 probably, you know, 6 kind of players in Souček because he really, let's be honest, he's a 6 and say Alvarez who can play a little. And then you say to, you know, Scamacca and obviously Paqueta, you 2 have free roam. And my wingers, you're constantly pushing up. You are constantly high. And then we're going to push up our fullbacks and we're going to use those 2 kind of holding players to then work those, you know, those horizontal spaces and those lateral spaces. So in all honesty, I think it could be good for him to stay because I think there are elements of the team, if we bring in, say, like Harvey Barnes, that could help him to flourish. And it seems nonsensical when we have a 33-year-old whose future is unknown in Antonio. We also then have Danny Ings, 30 as well, a 30-year-old who has another 2 years in his contract.
Yeah.
And we're looking at selling the 24-year-old who could, if he has a good season, see his value double to what we pay for him, or at least go up by another 10 to 15 million pounds. But because it's a difficult season and from what I'm told wasn't really wanted as someone who the club wanted to sign. That's not Moyes, by the way. I'm saying the club, not Moyes. Moyes did want him by all accounts. And that's what it is. Now the club have some more control. They're now going, let's get out the ones that we never wanted. That's
I really don't agree with selling him. I would absolutely do everything to keep him this summer and tell him you're going to be that main man. Antonio's 33. He cannot play every game. We need you. We've got Europa League again next season. We can't rely on Danny Ings to be that second striker. Moving Cornet centrally is something that's also a gamble because of his injury problems, and he's not played as a natural striker. He's just more of a versatile option. And then you've got players like Mubama who are unlikely to get a chance and maybe even get that loan move. So I don't see any point 100% if it's going to be a loan. I think the club will be more willing to sell permanently rather than a loan if they can get the feedback that they paid. But that's a big if because we spent a lot of money on him. And also what clubs realistically are going to be willing to take a gamble on someone that's not played a lot of football and arguably has lost a little bit of their value just because of the lack of games and the lack of performances that he's shown at West Ham. So for me, I'd be keeping him. I think it's a similar situation to what we saw with Paqueta, where it just takes a little bit of time to adjust and to understand, when you play in a match as a player, it can be difficult to kind of get on that wavelength initially with a player. Some people click really early, some people don't. We saw it with Paqueta. He's now clicked with a lot of those teammates that he was playing with this season, and he's arguably been our best player in the tail end of the year. So the same would happen with Scamacca. I have no doubt about that. So if he was to move to Roma, Mike, would you be happy with just having Antonio and Ings as our strike force next season, or would we have to bring in someone else?
I'd absolutely be pissed if that was our strike force going into next season. Again, as we said, Antonio's 33 years old, doesn't necessarily see his career at West Ham. As we kind of saw with certain things said, yes, there was honesty, and you kind of have to admire that. But things like, bear in mind, he's been at the club for so long, his main motivation for keeping the club up was his money, not the fans, not the club, not personal pride. It was about the money in his back pocket. Again, you have to kind of hats off to the honesty, but again, it shows where his priorities are. People say he's a legend. He doesn't have there's clearly not as much of an affinity for us or the club as maybe people hope and want there to be there. And Danny Ings it just isn't working. So you can't rely on a guy who has cheese strings for hamstrings in Antonio at all. So if he has a strop at the start of the season like he did this year or the last season, we could be in the same problem. So there's no point letting a player go if you're not going to replace him.
Yeah.
And we're not going to give Mubama a chance. So again, it's not as if you going, this player's going to go away for a year, see how they develop, maybe then sell them, maybe then bring him back into the fold if we maybe make a change, or whether maybe Moyes changes his own mind on him. We're not going to develop Mubama. That's pretty obvious. We've seen that over the course of seasons. Plenty of opportunities to play him, not played. So that's like unlikely to happen. So yeah, you can't just constantly get rid of players for less than you pay them. You pay for them, and also give up within a year. How many players have we seen that have struggled in the first year and then second, third, fourth year?
The same thing happened with Vlasic, though, didn't it? When he got loaned out literally after a season, and now we don't even know if he's going to be staying or going this summer. So
no, by all accounts, he doesn't want to stay, and you can't blame him for the way he was kind of shunted in and out of the team last season, and it's just a bit of a mess, isn't it? Really, we just seem to have no real direction. It's like, if anyone's going to give us money, we'll take it. And
I think there is a little bit of a divide in the fan base as well, which surprises me, because I think there are more people that would maybe be on board with Scamacca leaving, but just because they haven't seen what he can actually do, which is a shame. But I mean, let us know in the comments down below, because I've seen it before on the videos we've done around Scamacca that certain people do not like Scamacca and prefer Antonio. So do let us know in the comments what you think of this, whether you'd be happy if Scamacca went out on loan, or would you rather it be a permanent option, or would you be keeping him at the club for this summer? Let us know in the comments. Leave a like on the video if you are new, and hit the subscribe button. We're close to 700 subscribers now, which is awesome. And yeah, we're going to be keeping up the content throughout the summer, so do make sure to subscribe. Mike, on that note, there's one thing for us left to say, and that is,
come on,
you Irons.